Hello there and welcome to Love and Wargames. In this series of video, we will make an analysis on how to build the boxes that you buy depending on which faction you want to play and how to make sure you don't make mistakes in what you build so you keep your doors open, you have a playable force and you can move forward in your faction collecting with a good peace of mind. So it's not going to be an Orbat analysis. If you want this kind of an analysis, I would recommend you go to Speed Demon Painting. It does this already amazingly well. And if you want some French content, I also intervene for Barbuin Game, a French channel on YouTube. I also recommend to give it a look. And we will get going. We will start on June 2022 and not before because like that I decided to choose that to start at some point. We will go from there until today's release. October 2022 has just been announced, so we'll go until then, and from there on we'll cover the news. Here we will start with the main part, the main box that was released in June 22, which was the Suleiman Battlefleet, the second battlefleet to be released for the Sultanate. So in this battlefleet, what did we get? We get, first of all, the Suleiman Fleet Carrier, a massive resin ship that is a twin aircraft carrier, a very good centerpiece. We will talk about it in a minute. You also get sprues to make 3 Frontline Cruisers, the same cruisers that you can get in the other box of the Sultanate that you can buy, which is the Anatolia Battlefleet. You can get some basic combat cruisers like standard, and you can also build 2 of them together as a Hurrem or a Mehmed, which are basically 2 cruisers fused together to make a bigger ship. What is exclusive with the Suleiman Battlefleet is the support cruisers. You can build them as aircraft carrier variant, as a bombardment ship, and as a few support ships, and we will see which ones you should build. You also get 6 frigates of the Temir class. Those you don't get much customization, but we'll talk about how to play them. And you get 6 escort tokens of the Ferric class. Those are tokens there have been changed in the most recent version of the game, but it's good to talk about them, especially since there are ways for the Sultanate to be able to bring them in their list for free. Finally, you get 3 SRS token, which is quite convenient since you have an aircraft carrier. Let's start with the Suleiman Fleet Carrier. So, you are interested in buying this huge Suleiman box? Could it be interesting? Well, the first thing that you need to know is that, well, okay, before that, the first thing you need to know is really that it is a gorgeous model. I've seen it painted, I've seen it up close, and it's really good. I mean, just look at that. Then, in terms of rules, do you want it in your fleet? And I would say definitely. It's really a great carrier if you compare it to the carriers of other fleets, and it's really like one of the best model in terms of rules that the Sultanate has right now. It's really a defensive anchor in the sense that you will put it in the middle of your fleet, it will go forward, and it will absorb a lot of the enemy firepower quite efficiently. It has armor 8, citadel 15, which is already battleship class levels of resilience, and it has a healthy 8 hulls before it starts to degrade to its crippled profile, and then it will have another 6 hull points. What is really great with the Suleiman, and quite unusual for aircraft carriers, is that it has an inbuilt shield generator, which means that for most of the enemy incoming fire, you will reduce their dice pool for each attack by -3, and that's quite significant. The enemy will not be able to do cheap damage on it. It will need to focus a sizable amount of firepower in order to take care of it, or to use weapons that ignore the shields, such as torpedoes, but then you have escorts. It also has few special rules. I will not go into the details of this, but it means if the enemy does send you overwhelming firepower, you will not be crippled by extremely catastrophic explosions if he gets twice your citadel, which is already good, and it also means you have additional defense against aerial weapons. Again, always good to take. What is really interesting is that it has 12 SRS token in its non-crippled state, which is really a lot. You might not need more than this at a 1500 or 2000 points list. that's a lot of aircrafts. Sultanate aircrafts are not specifically great, they don't have something specific, but they are good all-rounders, and when you have so many, well, that's already a good thing. What the Suleiman is not is a battleship. It has moderate firepowers. It has these little rocket batteries, and you can only link two of those. Like if you have an enemy in the front arc, you will only be able to link two of these rocket batteries, which is not great. Then if it's in the middle, yes, you can shoot everywhere, but really the firepower is quite underwhelming. This is a resilient aircraft carrier that can send a lot of aircrafts, but it's not made to shoot at the enemy ships. And it's of course mandatory for the Battlefleet Suleiman. And what this gives you, first you need to put an Aydin class unit. This is a good ship, so you will always want it. You can add 3 additional Turkish ships, also quite classic for a battle fleet. And what do you get? You can include multiple units of Bayezid and Borsa, which are also like twin cruisers that have not yet been released, so you cannot use them yet as October 2022. But you also get a command override, which allows you to make a big reroll once per game. Good, but not game breaking. And yeah, it's the default battlefleet that you can get. And if you will bring the Suleiman on the on the seas, might as well bring him in a battlefleet Suleiman instead of a standard Sultanate battlefleet. Now, what do you get to do? You have 3 frontline cruisers to build, and there are quite a few options, and here are my recommendations. First, I highly recommend to make at least one Iskandar. This is the standard cruiser, which is first of all quite a good ship in itself. It's aggressively costed. It's quite easy to use because both of its heavy gun batteries, or whatever you replace it with, are pointed to the front, so you don't need to show your flank to the enemy to optimize the firepower. And it's quite useful if you start later on in your games to bring an Anatolia Battlefleet, because you will need to bring at least one Iskandar unit, and it's quite reasonable to want to bring multiple of these ships in a single unit. That would be great, and it's always good to bring at least one of those. They're very cost effective, especially if you replace one of these heavy gun batteries with a shield generator. That is gonna be very tanky ship, and unfortunately he overruns the Izmir, which is the same ship without this heavy gun battery, so quite shorter and cheaper, but they're almost the same price, Iskandar with a shield generator, which costs then minus 10 points, as the Izmir, which is something like 77 points. So I would recommend to take an Iskandar with a shield every day over an Izmir. If you get 2 or 3 of those, ideally with the escorts in the middle of the table, it's quite tanky and will allow the rest of your fleet to do what it has to do. If you want a cheaper option, you have the Pasha, which is very cheap at 70 points. I think it's the cheapest main cruiser of the Sultanate. It is fragile, it has only 3 hull points before it gets crippled, but it is both very fast and very agile with a vanguard move, and it's, like all Sultanate ships, very agile. It's very powerful, it has torpedoes and a heavy gun battery for 70 points, quite a good package. And if you really want to be cheeky, you can replace this heavy gun battery with a generator, for example a shield generator, which would make it a 60 points boat that can stay at the back of your fleet and keep using its quite powerful torpedo launchers, especially if you get this in a squadron of 2 or 3 Pashas. Then it's a very good investment, quite cheap in points, and will do the work. Finally, what you can absolutely do is use 2 of those 3 frontline cruisers you get and build either the Hurrem or the Mehmed. Why I recommend the Hurrem? Because it's a flagship and it allows you to lead Sultanate battle fleet with the Hurrem. And one of the things that can be limiting as a new player is to have enough flagship to be able to bring as many units as you want, because you are locked into a certain number of unit slots. The Mermaid is very good, especially as a later player, because it has some specific rules that allow you to counter spell some of the enemy's best abilities. It's an ability called Fortunes of War, but as a new player I would recommend using the flagship just for the flexibility that it offers during your list building. If there is one thing in the whole Battlefleet that you should magnetize, maybe it's these two little turrets to the back, because the Mehmed is exactly this ship without these turrets. So if you remove them, you can proxy it as a Mehmed later when you will not need the Hurem anymore, and that can really be a good thing to do. The Hurem, on top of being a flagship, is really a good ship. As you just look at it, it has 4 heavy gun batteries all pointed to the front, which is already significant, and you can replace each of them with a particle beamer. Particle beamers, it's a weapon that is mostly seen on the Covenant of the Enlightened, and it's very powerful. It has sustained inbuilt. It's quite powerful even at a long range, and if you build 4 of those on this thing that has already a shield generator, damn, the enemy will really have a hard time to take care of it. Plus, you can get a second generator. I would recommend either magnetic to protect you from air raids, or a shroud generator to really make sure that the enemy will not be able to cripple it with regular firepower anytime soon. You can also build 3 support cruisers. Those are Mass 2 cruisers as well, and there is a lot of options. What I would recommend is one of each of those that you see here. First of all, the Aydin, as we talked about, it's a mandatory ship if you want to unlock the Suleiman Battlefleet. And why wouldn't you want? Because it is a very good ship. First of all, it's cheap at 65 points, and you can attach it to any unit, not only flagships, which means that they will, this Aydin and the ship it is attached to will cover each other against air attacks, torpedoes, these kind of things, and they will activate together, which is always good. What the Aydin does is that, first of all, it removes 1 disorder token per activation around him, not only to the unit it is attached to, which is already great. Disorder can be really annoying, especially for the Suleiman, for example, because if it is at the worst level of disorder, it cannot send its SRS token. So by having an Aydin, you are sure that when you will activate the Suleiman, it will at least get 1 disorder token less, and then will be able to send its SRS token. Also, I will not talk too much about this, but it gives you 1 more card, which is great in the current state of the game because you need cards to do a lot of things, but you cannot stack it. If you get 2 Aydin units, you will not be able to stack this bonus. It will only ever be +1 card. It will be too powerful otherwise. Also, you can get a Konya ship, which is used for repairing. So what can it do? First of all, it's a repair platform, meaning it can launch additional dices to repair, it can repair hull points, and it can use its success to repair the ships around it. For 75 points, it's already quite great. And it has a 1/3 chance to restore any escort token that has been destroyed within 10 inches. Now, escort tokens are not so easy to destroy anymore, you cannot just focus them, but it's still good to know that the enemy will really have trouble to take care of the skiff escort token, especially since escorts are so important now. They can be attached to any unit, and of course you will want to be around the units that have these escort tokens. Finally, as a support cruiser, you can build a Morea, which is a mine layer and a mine sweeper, which means it will drop some mines at the start of the game before the deployment, and it can be used to remove mines around himself during its activation, which is great. It's not very powerful. You can see it only has this little rocket battery, but it is quite resilient for its size because it has a mirage generator, which means the enemy will have a harder time damaging it, and which gives it more mobility. The Constantinople, the aircraft carrier, you don't really need it, at least for now. You have the Suleiman, which is already a great aircraft carrier with 12 SRS. You don't need much more. And I wanted to talk a little bit more, why not the Mihima? This is a bombardment ship. Unfortunately, it has a very short range, and what it wants to do, it wants to play with portals. Portals is one of the specificities of the Sultanate faction, and it's a great capacity, but unfortunately portal generators are not so great right now, and there are some specific portal ships that have not yet been released nor announced. So we don't know when they will arrive. It's mostly from the Order subfaction, while the Suleiman is from the Turkish subfaction. And later the Mirima might be very good when the Sultanate has access to a lot of portals, but for now I wouldn't recommend it. If you really love the idea of this ship and you really want it, do note that even though these missiles can only shoot 10 inches for now, or through a portal, if you had more Mirimas to the unit with portals, they can get their portals a bit further, which means that they could shoot potentially uh, up to 20 inches if you have 3 Mirimas, which is still not a great range, but if you absolutely want to make it work, you can do it like this. Though I would recommend not building it yet. You have 6 Temir frigates, those small little ships. Those are really one of the best units of the Sultanate. They're only 30 points, which is really, really cheap, yeah, for what they do. They each have a gun battery, okay, so far enough, and they also each have micro torpedoes. This I've seen it quite a few times on the table. Each time the player brings like 5 or 6 Temirs in a pack, damn, these things can really make a hole in the enemy fleet. You underestimate them because they are quite small, but that's a lot of firepower on such a small and fast ship. They are very fast. Though they are very fragile, they are one of the only Mass 1 ships that still exist with only 2 hull points. So really, if they start to get targeted, especially with blast or um, torrent templates, they will get destroyed fast. So best advice, keep them on the flank. They do get pack hunters, so they want to be quite many, at least 3, so you want to play them in packs of 5 usually, so you have some redundancy in case you take some fire. And they're very fast, so hide them behind terrain and bring them for the pain. Finally, you have these skiff escorts. Those unfortunately lost their special rules. Before they could move everywhere. Now they're just basic escort tokens. Every faction has a standard escort token now, so no specificity anymore. And for 8 points, they are really good. I will not make a big digression about escorts, but they help you to defend against aerial attack, against boarding, against torpedoes, and they can even help you help your firepower at point blank. They're really great, and if you bring it also a Konya to repair them, that's a lot of utility you get for 8 points. What I would recommend if you want to use a lot of them, and that's a little tip, because you have only 6 tokens and you might want to use a lot more, is to give them hull points as well, and say like, okay, like this skiff, like this specific token counts as 2, and then if one of them is damaged, you just count the hull points going down, just as you would a normal ship, and counting that yes, you lose one of those, but it allows you to bring more tokens to your fleet. And finally, now that you've built your Suleiman Battlefleet, here is an example of what could be a collection of the Sultanate faction. I took into consideration the fact that you later on bought the Anatolia Battlefleet, which is a smaller one that gives you especially the Anatolia Battle Cruisers and some additional classic cruisers and frigates. And what would such a fleet look like? It would look of the Battlefleet Suleiman with obviously the Suleiman itself, and the escort, like the supply ships, such as the Aydin and the Moria. On the other side, we have the Konya here. All those work very well and they are quite cheap when you will want to make an actual list. You also have 10 Temir frigates. I recommend playing them 5 by 5. This way you can make the maximum use of the pack enter rules, even if you lose 1 or 2 of those. The Anatolia is a great ship. You also get some free skiffs when you use the Battlefleet Anatolia, always great. Iskandar are the mandatory part of the Battlefleet Anatolia. They are very good in the center as we've seen, with or without shield generators and escorts. You also want a Pasha to go on the flank and do a little cheeky objective capture early game. And what do we see here? The Mehmed Grand Monitor with some escorts, obviously. Why the Mehmed? Well, as we've talked earlier, this is another build you can have from the Hurrem, and the Hurrem is very good until you buy the Battlefleet Anatolia because it can serve as a flagship. But later on, when you will have the Anatolia itself, you might want to use Mehmed like this because it's a very powerful ship as well, and it has some very useful rules. So this is actually a legal list. So it's quite some points, but it's legal. You have the flagship here, Anatolia and Suleiman. The Aydin and the Iskanders are the mandatory ships, and then you can add 3 more units of the Turkish type or Sultanate types on each of them. This is a perfectly legal list that you can play with only the Battlefleet Suleiman and the Battlefleet Anatolia, using absolutely every model that you can build. And this would be a quite fun list to play. I've already played with and against such a fleet, and let me tell you, this is no joke. It's quite good for beginners because the Sultanate are quite agile and most of their guns are forward facing, so they're quite easy and fun to play. But there is quite a few tricks that you can do with them, and especially it's good for beginners because you will learn the game with these ships, and later on, when the more complex ships such as the older ones will arrive, you will be able to use them in the same composition. Let's imagine we can add Battlefleet Order here. And of course, you also have the Egyptians coming very soon with some very cool flying ships and skimming units that are coming. They look absolutely amazing. So if you want to play Sultanate, the Suleiman is definitely the best box to start. And the Anatolia is a very good complementary fleet. Thank you very much for the video. I hope it was informative. Please, if you liked it or you want to support, just give us a thumbs up, a like, it will help very much. If you want to be informed of when we release more videos, and we will very soon, do subscribe. We have unboxing videos, we have battle reports, and more of these analyses coming very soon. And if you agree or disagree with what I said about the Sultanate, do let us know in the comments. And just as important, I'm very much looking for feedback. If you see anything that could be done differently or better, or you have just words of encouragement, please also let us know in the comments, and this will be very useful. If you have finally any question, let us know in the comments, and I will make sure that if you have any requests for tips or how to play Sultanate or anything, I will answer it in the comments. Finally, if there is some specific faction for which you would like me to do a little in-depth analysis on how to make competitive list, let me know which faction you would like me to analyze, which point values of the fleet you're looking for, 750, 1000, 2000 points, this kind of thing. And I will make you a few offers depending on which faction you choose on how to make semi-competitive list, so you can still have fun with your friends but play an optimized list. Thank you very much. Again, I hope you enjoyed, and don't forget to spread the love around you. Bye bye.